Okay, Jordan Ray here. Welcome back to part 3 of this video series, kind of building this summer vacation map display for a Google form. Okay, we're going to use JavaScript in this video to tie together those first 2 videos. If you didn't watch them, I would suggest jumping back to part 1 of this series. I'm trying to make each one about 10 minutes in length. And you might notice that I've added a few extra styles and a few extra markup inside of the body. And that's just because I want to save a little bit of time. If you want to see that code that I've added, head on over to the GitHub repository for this project. And what we're going to build today is we're going to kind of flesh out this JavaScript down here. When the map is initialized, we want it to continue to pull, as new people add to the form, we want it to add them as markers on the map, and we want it to kind of pan around. And we also want names to appear here on the side. And then I've got a little control button here that will stop it from refreshing, right? And for some reason, the example, the kind of boilerplate code that we pulled here from the documentation is centered on, where is this? Centered on, in Australia somewhere, I think. Is that Australia? Yeah, centered in Australia, in Canberra, Australia. And we don't want that. We want it to be we want it to kind of jump around. So let's go ahead and get started there. We're going to declare a few extra variables here inside of our code. So they're just declaring a map global variable. We're going to actually add a couple extra to this. Global variables, not always the best way to go. Probably usually not the best way to go, but for this example, and for a functional little display like this, it will work fine. And we want pinned cities. Perfect. Those are the 3 variables that we're going to have globally, and we are going to declare the map inside. Let's see. Let's make it zoom 3, and we want the center to be dynamic. But how are we going to make it dynamic? We're going to reach into the cities empty array that I've got here and grab element, sorry, not element 0, we want the element that the counter is on, which will be 0 for the very first time. And we want it to tie into the geocode. Okay. So what that is doing is it's going to be looking into an array that doesn't exist yet, and it's going to be pulling out the geocode for the very first element of that array. To make sure that we have that cities populated, we actually need to dive into our code.js, and we're going to create a get cities method. So we're going to do that with google.script.run. We want to add we'll just call it get cities. And we also want to add a success handler, with success handler. And that function is going to have I'm just going to call it response. And the order is important here. You've got to put with success handler in the chain before you call get cities. But when it runs, then it's going to create this map. I'm very finicky about my spacing. In JavaScript, it's not 100% essential, but for me to read it well, I like to have everything spaced out nicely. And you'll find that when you work with other people, they like to have everything spaced out nicely too. So let's save everything there. And we need to actually create this get cities function. now that we have that function typed out, all we're doing is pulling all the data from the sheet. I'm using Shift to get rid of the headers, and then I'm kind of reformatting the rest of the rows one at a time with this mapping function. If you want more information on that, send me a message, put a comment below, send me a message on Twitter. We can talk more about map and how it is used. And then that is being returned back into our index.html. Perfect. Well, we want to actually do something with that with this response here. What is returned becomes this response, and what we're going to do is we are going to set cities, this empty array up here, equal to response. And you'll see I'm going to then use cities of 0 and the geocode, which is coming from right here, to be the center of our map, the very first thing on the map. And once we have done that, we are going to place a marker. So we got to create a function for that. We're just going to run place marker, and right below init map function, I'm going to create place marker. Once you notice functions getting too long, I could just put everything right in order up here inside of this with success handler, but I think it's best to move out this logic for placing a marker to its own function. So what we're going to do there, I'm going to pull out the current city into its own variable from cities counter, and then I'm going to use the map that we've defined here. Actually, sorry, the map was defined globally here, but then we set the map once it pulls in its array of cities. And then one of the methods that we can use on there is pan to, and we're going to pan to the current city dot geocode. This exact same variable that we have here, we're just going to have the map pan to. That's a method that's built on there by Google, and we're going to make use of it because I think it looks pretty cool. I'm going to start scanning around that map. Then you'll also notice in the code.js, I created this little pinned toggle and set it to false, because the very first time we run it, we want to kind of animate a little dropping thing. So we're going to say if it is not pinned, we're going to actually drop that little marker in. So we're going to say, let's create a tag, and I'm going to use this templating string because it's a little easier to type strings with variables in them. And this is ES6 syntax for this, or maybe it's called a string literal. If you look that up and you find out that I was wrong, please let me know in comments below. I keep saying that. I keep telling people to leave comments, but I love talking about JavaScript, so if you have a comment, please leave it below. And then I'm going to create a new marker, and that's going to be another, this is its own separate object, and it's going to be google.maps.marker, and that takes in an object, and the very first key is going to be position, and that's going to take current city.geocode. And then it's going to have an animation of google.maps.animation.drop. It's going to take the title of this tag variable that I just created, and then the map is going to just be map. And once we have done that, created our new marker here, we're going to document.get elements by ID, and we're going to grab the tag list ID, and we're going to set the inner HTML. I'm sorry, I cannot type. We're going to add to that a little list element with the tag variable that we just created. Close that list element. Close the string literal there. And that should be, oh no, we got to do one other thing. We have to then set our pinned key to true. Because now that we have dropped the marker on, we want it to be marked as pinned, and so we never drop the marker on it again. And once we've done that, we are going to increment our current city counter, and we are going to create a little ternary expression here. Now this is something that is a little more complex, but what it's basically going to do, instead of just incrementing counter, is it's only going to increment the counter if there's still cities left in our cities array. And if not, we want it to go back to 0 and start back over. So it keeps the panning going around. And how we're gonna write this, we're gonna say if counter is less than cities.length -1, then we're gonna say what happens if that is true. Then we're gonna add 1 to the counter. But if that is not true, we're gonna just set it back to 0. And then so that it'll start the whole process over, panning around. So I think that will get us going. Let's go ahead and republish. I'm going to deploy as a web app a new version and just call it should be working. Because I think it's going to ask us for permissions. Yes, it does. It's got some new permissions to ask us for. And now you've got a working map tool tied into your Google Forms. In the interest of time, I'm going to challenge you to set up an interval that will run this get cities function on a loop so that you continue to get responses as people put them in and then place them back on the map. The completed code will be on GitHub, so please look there. Go ahead and fork the project, pull the repository into your own projects, modify the code, play with the code, and enjoy. As always, subscribe for more great educational projects with Google Apps Script, and like, comment, and send me any messages for any ideas you have for future videos or even ways to modify this video. As always, keep coding.